Howdy.
That was an impressive opening. Thank you.
It's madness, but my dad has abandoned me. So I won the games, and I figured we'd just do another episode of Connect This. Welcome.
I think Henry and Rye are way overqualified to work on this show. I've just decided.
Thank you, Travis. I'm excited to have our regular guests back. Let me do a quick introduction. We've got Doug Dawson at CCG. Welcome back.
Hey, welcome back to you too, Chris. It's just really good to be here because I haven't stirred up any crap, and it's Thursday, so let's go.
And I just want to note that my Minnesota Gopher men are not in the tournament. Your Maryland men are not in the tournament, but your women are looking good in the tournament, I think. So
we will see.
Yeah. We got Kim McKinley from UTOPIA Fiber. Welcome back.
Thank you, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
97.1% Irish and English, so this is my day. These are my people. So I'm.
What are you doing on here?
We'll cover that in a second. I'm not sure she was been sober for the whole day. And we got Travis Carter, our regular co-host. Welcome back, Travis.
Thank you, Chris. Just hanging out here in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Excellent.
Yep. Okay.
Where Travis will take 3 rights to avoid.
All right, I was waiting for it. Yes, I'm on Wi-Fi, so we'll see how successful we are today.
Excellent. And I'm Chris Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I am so excited. I love March Madness, but without my dad around to watch the games with, I'm not excited. I did bring my brackets though, so I've got those set up in case anyone wants to join me in that. So.
Is that from the basement?
We have a video to start with that Travis has contributed. This is Travis apparently so alienated his friend that he's riding on the outside of his vehicle. Oh no, he's on the inside. It looks like.
All right, so driving from Phoenix to Albuquerque, I couldn't believe it, and I'm curious if we could ever find out who actually successfully permitted this project. But they've been running a macro trench in the shoulder of the interstate, and about every mile, it looked like they were putting in a microduct system, and about every mile they would branch off to a series of handholds on the side of the road that they extended and kept going. I have no idea how they successfully navigated this to get this done.
So that's a state highway or a US. It's not an interstate, right?
Well, that's a good question. It must be a state highway, yes. So it was all the way from Phoenix to Albuquerque.
1 lane both directions?
Yeah. Actually, I think it was from Phoenix to Flagstaff. Sorry. No, it was 2 lanes each way.
Okay. You should send me which road it was.
A really, really cool use of getting mid or long haul fiber in, because I don't know how they would have, and Kim probably knows this better than I do, but the geography out there, wow, digging out with all the the landscape issues and the boulders and everything.
At first, I was wondering if it was the Arizona middle mile or that project they're putting in out there. But then if it's going all the way to Flagstaff, no, that can't be the case. That's the Arizona state project. So I have no idea who it is. But yeah, it's an interesting environment. But I want to know who, like the person who's driving. You must be a thrilling guest as a passenger as you're filming micro trenching all the way.
Well, in every little town we go into and we see a fiber optic company, we U-turn back, and I like to take pictures of it and see if they're open, and then knock on the door and then see if people are willing to talk. It's amazing the number of projects there are between San Diego and Minneapolis. I'm really surprised.
I just looked, and there is a interstate between there, and there's also a 4-lane state highway 260. You were probably on 260. Because I can't imagine they ever got that on a federal interstate. So.
It did not look like an interstate to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is how you are.
Yeah, Route 260, which is a straight line, man. So.
Yeah, I just follow what Garmin tells me. I don't even know where I am half the time, but I thought it was just fascinating how they did it.
Well, if you look back on it and you can give us a sense of where it was, there's folks in Arizona we can ask to see if anyone are familiar with it. Awesome. We have one other multimedia little surprise, I think, queued up. Is that right? Did you get the email, Henry? If not, I'm just going to look at myself here for a second and assume you didn't. We'll move on to the first topic, and you can just surprise us with that later on. Sean asked, what's the difference between macro trenching and micro trenching? I don't think the macro is just a word that we put up because it looks like it's bigger than a micro trench.
You can dig, even micro trenching machines will go 3 inches wide. Hardly any, in a city street, you would never do that because it hurts the street.
Yeah, it
But
was
a shoulder like that, who cares, right?
Right, in that climate, right? Because like up
Right.
here, if you did that and then it froze a couple times, it would just separate. It would be 2 roads.
Yes.
Effectively.
Do you still have that picture I sent you the other day of the handhole? I think Kim and Doug might get a kick out of this. What we deal with
the frozen one.
Yeah, the ice cube.
I'll dig it out in a little bit if I have a chance to look away. Illinois is doing something interesting, specifically a Democrat in Illinois. I don't know how many other Democrats are supportive of this, but Doug, do you want to fill us in on that piece of news?
Yeah, they are talking about changing the state law so that municipalities are not eligible for the BEAD grants, the federal $42 billion grants, of which Illinois has to get more than $1 billion. So there's at least $1 billion coming to the state. And if they do that, then that's not going to pass muster at the NTIA. And if the NTIA rejects their plan, they simply don't get funded. And they're not the only state. We're having this battle in North Carolina. North Carolina has a prohibition against municipal. And if you want to get that money, you have to relax it for this one set of grants. And so there may be several states who don't get their money. And I know in this state, there's going to be an uprising. I mean, there has been 50 counties here who have had broadband committees for 5 years. And if they don't get these grants, I do not want to be a legislator in Raleigh.
Well, the thing is that if the state does not get a plan approved, the state has to get a plan approved with NTIA. If they do not do that, then localities can apply for the money. And so NTIA needs to develop a process in which they would handle that.
I would hope that this would lead them to do that, because there's probably going to be 3 or 4 states who do not get their money.
And I think I'm from an organization that believes in local self-reliance. We are very much opposed to preemption. It really upsets me that states preempt, and I understand that states chafe when the federal government preempts. It does strike me as one thing that, like, North Carolina has long just screwed its communities. It's another thing for Illinois to be like, hey, we're about to get all this money. We're just going to like totally say, no, we're not going to follow the federal law. It's bizarre to me. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Like, North Carolina can believe what they are. They can be in like Charter's back pocket, whatever. But like for Illinois to be like, oh, here's all this money, let me just give it away and still have a broadband problem, is just flipping dumb.
Now, there is one counter idea here. Illinois has a budget surplus this year, and they could turn that down and fund it themselves.
Well, Trevor,
I don't think there's been any talk of that, but that's possible.
No, that's insanity.
It would be insane. It would be insane. Yeah.
It's
politics we're talking about.
Illinois just raised their gas tax in order to fund a major investment in better roads and $420 million in new broadband. But I mean, they can't turn down $1 billion. There's too much of the state that desperately needs it. It's just remarkable to me to have this idea that like it wasn't just municipal networks, it was partnerships. They're pretty explicit about it. I mean, it's just, does he actually have strings on his hands? I mean, like, is that how it works? Like,
the way that law is written, if an ISP comes and builds 90% of the money out of their own pocket, and a county gives them $100,000 of 1% matching, the project doesn't apply. I mean, it's an absolute ban. So
okay, let's like devil's advocate. What is the reason why they would turn down this money? Like, what is one?
There's only one possible reason. It's the same reason that California's been nutty. The lobbyists got to them. That's the only possible reason. I mean, California Democrats have been pro AT&T for 40 years. So that has nothing to do with party. So it's money and lobbying. That's the only possible reason. Because there's no sane reason.
Well, this brings us to an interesting piece, which is that AT&T had revealed that it created a whole team to go after this money. And by a whole team, I assume that they mean two teams. One team to try and figure out how to get the federal dollars that are available via the states, and the other team to lobby to try to make sure no one else could get the money. So that's some of what's going on. But AT&T they're trying to get at least $1 billion of the federal money to distribute, which admittedly for them is a small amount. They got $3 billion, I think more than $3 billion from the most recent Connect America fund, which they just pocketed. They didn't. I just saw Doug, and I realized, Travis, we're going to bring you back into this in a second. But Doug, you had said that they really didn't do much with the fixed wireless, and I hadn't heard anyone else talk about it. And I discount what you say on a regular basis, so I mostly ignored it. But then I saw in their investor call that they have 120,000 fixed wireless subs.
But they've been claiming that they've had this for 5 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So obviously they haven't. I mean, like, that's great for AT&T to be like in front of like 50 million homes and have 120,000 subs.
Because what they actually told their investors very recently was they're actually going to launch the product for real in August. Which now also what they've just said is by 2025 they're going to get rid of half their copper. They're going to get rid of it, and unless they have this product out there, they have nothing to replace it with. And this product doesn't work in half rural areas anyhow because you don't have any cell phone coverage. So this is an odd company. Now remember, 6 months ago they said they upped their forecast of fiber passings from 25 million to 30 million. The extra 5 million are these grants. So they expect to pass 5 million more passings. So they're going to want more than $1 billion. Do the math. So they didn't say a bigger number because they didn't want to scare people. Their problem is what state's going to give them the money except for the 3 or 4 states who are in their pocket. So,
well, I'm curious. I mean, we're in some of the work we're doing in some of these counties. County boards are like, well, AT&T is asking for money, and we're not hearing from anyone else. So I guess we'll see if we can get the state to give AT&T our money. They just don't know what to do.
Right. Well, that's the problem. I just wrote a blog about the other day. You know, if you don't have an ISP pestering you for the money who's local, you may not have another choice. Remember that those big telcos, Frontier, CenturyLink, and Windstream, all those guys bought up all the independent telephone companies. There's giant swaths of America where there aren't any of those guys. And so if you don't have a co-op and you don't have those guys around, who are you going to give the money to? So, well,
that's where I'm curious. And so, Travis, when you and I were talking, like even just 3 or 4 years ago, I feel like you were like, "Hey, Chris, like if you know of any interesting opportunities in places that are warm in the winter where I can build year round, I'd be interested." And then last year, I felt like you were like, "Nah, I think I'm going to focus on Minneapolis and this area," and like I wasn't sure. Where are you at with that? Like, would you build in Albuquerque if you had the opportunity?
I don't. So here's the problem, and I learned this problem when we rolled out this opportunity in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Getting financing for upstart fiber networks from traditional lenders is, I'm not even going to say virtually impossible.
Right.
So that's where the whole thing stalled. Even if you got 50% matching money from the state, the Fed, the county, outer space, it doesn't matter where it comes from, you're still liable for the other 50 cents. Your traditional lenders will not lend against it unless somebody is willing to either personally guarantee it with strong assets they have, or if a company like UTOPIA or USI or somebody that's been around for years and years and years will backstop the debt. So it really takes you the wind out of your sail very, very quickly on all these federal dollars that are there. It's sort of irrelevant if you can't get financing for the rest.
And that's a warning that I've been putting out because there's a whole lot of folks thinking about starting new ISPs just because of that. They're not getting financed.
Nobody trusts them.
Well, you shouldn't.
Yeah,
and the federal government and the states already know better because they learned that lesson in 2009. They're not giving money to untried people. So
and I actually, it was my one question for this was for Kim. Is if Kim had to start over today, could you get UTOPIA off the ground? And I would say from our standpoint, I don't think we could.
I think the only thing that we have over you, Travis, is that we have the ability to have a backstop from the cities. To start off. So if you're looking at that you don't have any secure financing or any secure assets behind it, I don't know if you can, right? And I think that is a trouble. And when people are looking at this, and I hear this every day from UTOPIA, and I'm assuming you hear it if, like where you are, is people are like, well, how'd you guys do this? You've made it look so easy. We can go get financing. And I'm like, the financing that we've gotten in Utah and the financing we helped get in Bozeman, Montana is because of the Utopia name and the track record for the past 20 years, not what we're walking into the market to today. It's a totally different aspect and like game. But a lot of people don't see that. They think that since we say it's so easy to get financing, that they can get financing easy as well.
I'm still stunned today that every week we will get a senior lender wanting to take our business on board. But when we started, I couldn't even get anyone to borrow me 10 cents.
Yeah,
so really, it's to answer your question, it's really just how big of liability do I want to take on personally, and where is my comfort level there? And when you look at it, and a lot of these operators are going to be a little older. So if you're 50 years old, how much liability do you want to take on? Because you don't have a lot of runway to start over.
Right. So do you want to try to hire people and be in a place that you're not familiar with and try to do this? If you're now liable for it, you're probably not.
Well, I would tell you this: if I was to do it again, I would do it in a major market though, where you have density. Density is the thing that we really benefit from, and that has the large incumbents. But would I go to Chicago or would I go to Denver or any of these other? No, I just don't know the politics of those cities. And would they shut us down instantly, even if I could get financing to build?
But I think
I need to put what Travis just said in perspective. He said that he said, because he said something that's really actually profound, that you have to put your whole company on the line as collateral. People don't realize when they get that electric or that telephone co-op next door to come and build a 3-county area, they put their entire co-op up as collateral. And if this thing fails, they go out of business. And
no, I think that's.
I mean, they have to completely pledge their business to borrow this kind of money.
So I'm confused by that, because I thought the whole point of them creating subsidiaries in many of these states is because they cannot tie that to it, because they do not want to bring the entire electric system down. And by they, I mean the states will not allow the co-ops to bring their entire electric system down with a foolhardy investment.
I said telephone co-ops. Electric co-ops are not allowed to do that. You're correct.
Okay, right.
Because
Thank you.
FERC actually regulates people where the FCC doesn't. So.
There's others at ILSR who might challenge that. We can talk about that another day.
Well, I agree.
So we have one other topic that I wanted to hit real quick before we bring Sasha on, and that is that Lafayette, Louisiana. The person who founded Lafayette, Louisiana, Terry Huval. I loved him to death. Great guy, fascinating individual. The mayor that brought it he'd been replaced by another mayor who, frankly, I didn't want to have anything to do with, and who in some ways tried to cripple the system, it felt like. But Lafayette utility system has just plodded on without my help somehow, without me paying attention to it, and is really doing some cool stuff. They got a grant in order to expand service to some unserved areas around them. It involves 1,500 census blocks. This is in a news story that we might be able to throw up on a banner, a link to it. I'm not sure. Someone might put it in the comments. And they had their big ISPs around them challenged their grant in more than 1,000 of the 1,500 census blocks. And then when those were evaluated, nearly all of them, like more than 99% of them, only 4 of those challenges were held up. This should be criminal. Like, this is absurd that these big companies can get away with this, to just try to stop an investment into an area that sorely needs it. So Doug, you also paid attention to this.
Well, and we just saw that, and everyone who filed one of the NTIA grants 6 months ago were just challenged across the board. CenturyLink down there, they were challenged, I'm sure, by Cox and AT&T largely, and so the ILECs are just challenging by the hopes that you'll give up on some of them. So it doesn't matter if they're right or wrong; they're simply challenging them all, and it's a real administrative hassle, because it meant in this case that the NTIA had to actually go and clear each one of them. And it's a whole lot of work, and it's a massive burden on the granting agencies. And that was a $200 million grant process. The $42 billion grant process has a challenge in it. Everything that somebody tries to do is going to be challenged. That's
Go
going to be
ahead,
an
Kim.
absolute nightmare.
And I think that's the point, right? So we're
Oh,
looking
yeah.
at these federal programs that have all the flexibility, and we say we love the flexibility that these federal government programs are providing, and that you can go spend this money if you feel like your county is not getting these speeds or whatever. Like some of that language is in there, but that's what you're seeing in Lafayette, is that they're going to challenge them with this. And is this going to happen? Is this not going to just start in Lafayette? Is this going to go across the country of what we're seeing on these?
Well, yeah, we
Absolutely.
saw there's
It's
a Knox.
across the country. Yeah.
Yeah, we wrote about it in New Hampshire as well. But here's the thing, right? This is preventable. This is the sort of thing where policy should have prevented this, right? To some extent, Minnesota.
Remember, Congress wrote the rules right in the damn law.
Okay, well, that's a problem. So Minnesota, in
Minnesota,
Minnesota,
got their words in. That's what happened.
If in Minnesota you engage in a challenge that is then not upheld, you lose the ability to challenge.
Oh, no, in Minnesota, they don't even take challenges from people like CenturyLink anymore. They just said, go away.
But I think that Doug brings up a good point, though. How many of these entities have the manpower to challenge, and how many are going to really pursue when it gets nasty? And I think the incumbents are just looking and saying, oh, these guys will give up because they're a small mom and pop and they don't want to challenge the big guys because they think they're going to lose. And it's going to be a problem with this federal money that's coming out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So then I guess the question is, and I think we've asked this before, what percentage of this federal dollars go to the incumbent provider in the area? Is it 50%, 90%, all of it?
No, I think if you add up all the plans of all the guys, they're probably all collectively going for 30 or 40% of it. It's a lot.
In part because they don't care about the other areas. Like
AT&T, Frontier, even the old CenturyLink, the new CenturyLink is going to be in there. Windstream, they're all going after it.
But I think
Charter's going after a bunch. So,
right, but I think it's worth noting, like, I don't think AT&T is going after much in Mississippi, right? Like, they have areas where they're going, but there's other areas that they're just not even going to compete for, and that's why, Travis, the number might be lower than you would think.
Right.
But won't the incumbent in Mississippi go for it then?
AT&T is the incumbent. AT&T is like all of Mississippi. I mean, like what Doug was saying earlier, there's no small companies. I mean, C-Spire would get mad at me for saying that, but like, there's not a real tradition of small companies in a lot of these states.
If you map the map of Mississippi and you map AT&T and all the incumbents, you can barely find the incumbents on the map. They're little tiny dots, right? So,
I guess
so then what happens? Are we expecting a bunch of new entrants into the market to take these dollars and run with it?
I expect those giant investment-driven firms who are coming in with $1 billion each of equity to be in these grants too.
I mean,
we don't know who they are. They're just going to appear, and they're going to be mystery bidders. You watch. There's going to be a bunch of them.
So, Travis, are you bidding for any of this money at all?
No, I don't think we qualify for it. So
not in Minneapolis, but if
no,
you wanted
our business model is pretty static now. Of the direction we're heading. We're like I said, we're using the kind of the tailwind that's been generated through doing this for 10 years to just do traditional financing, et cetera, et cetera. Plus all the rules that I've seen, it would be real tough to operate within those parameters. So I just prefer to kind of do it by myself.
There's a bunch of stuff I want to continue on, but we're gonna stop there for a second. Bring Sasha on in a second. Before that, we were lucky to have Kim with us today. She had a real doozy of an experience that we're gonna share here. I think Henry.
No.
That was about an hour and a half ago. That was where I was taking my little rest break on the slopes.
And your ankle still works?
Yeah, correct.
Wow,
yeah,
nice.
I'm 41. My ankle's still holding strong. Give me another 10 years, I feel like it might be gone.
Wow.
Travis, I just want to know, what do you think about her goggles?
Well, that's where I was going. I don't know if we've seen those. Those are, I like them. Yeah,
They're bigger than any other goggles I've ever seen.
Yeah. Maybe she could bring those out on a future episode. So.
Oh, for sure.
Big. If you're
Look how safety conscious she is. So she had a helmet on and everything. So well done.
If you wear those goggles, though, you have to have like a head thing that has like antenna sticking up from it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, she probably did, but they probably broke off when she fell.
And I was just going really slow when I finally fell today. It wasn't even like going fast. So I just was really excited to talk about what governments are doing right. that had me really excited today. So
I like it.
So with that, let's bring on Sascha Meinrath, someone who has been working, in this space, non-traditional ISPs for a very long time. Palmer Chair in telecommunications at Penn State is what I saw. But Sascha, you've been involved in many things, and XLab certainly key among them. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Hello, connectivity compadres. It's awesome to be here.
I just want to make sure before we get going, you're not going to bring up any embarrassing pictures of him, are you?
Of Sascha?
Yeah.
Mutually assured destruction if he does. That's all.
Very good.
No, with Sascha, what I'm curious about, I think we should start out is our idea of like what should be done outside of the box. And Sascha, you in particular, I wanted to bring on because I've noodled on this, and then you brought it up independently, and I was like, maybe I'm more crazy than I thought, or maybe I'm not. I don't know. But the idea that making sure that cities are building networks, why not just make sure everyone is connected? So run us through what you're thinking about.
Yeah, well, it's crazy to me that we keep having all these conversations about affordable connectivity without talking about free connectivity. And it's crazy to me that we keep talking about, internet is an essential service, a critical infrastructure, without talking about universality of that infrastructure. And so, eventually we're going to kind of become a little bit more enlightened, and we're going to say, look, baseline connectivity, everyone just needs to have. It's like, water, shelter, food, right? And in a 21st century economy, it's clear that when you don't create a universal service mandate, you're purposefully engaging in policy at the local, state, federal level that is basically institutionalized racism writ large. And so if you want to really talk about digital equity, I think we need to put back on the table universal free connectivity. And it's not so crazy when you really think about it. I mean, what is every single university campus doing today? Universal free connectivity for everyone on campus. And to expand that to a slightly larger campus, let's say a city, municipality, a county, to me is the next logical step in a 21st century civil society. So I and many others have started pushing a little more actively on this. And of course, for the last 22 years, I've been pushing this very idea, first in community broadband and then into kind of larger scale networking initiatives. But I think that which was total crazy, radical tinfoil hat insanity 20 years ago is beginning to enter the mainstream. And so this is different than, say, like everyone gets gig connectivity, although that would be lovely. But certainly there should be a baseline where we just say, look, this is so important. Let's make sure we have that.
What is the baseline to you, Sascha?
That's where I get stuck too. Yeah.
I would set it at the 25/3 mark, right? That just says, look, this is, we all know that's pretty minimal to begin with. It is the minimum amount to be, qualify as federal definition of broadband.
Well, I think that I agree. I don't disagree with you that we should look at like providing a baseline. But when Google Fiber came into the marketplace, they came in with this free product, right? And they came in and it was like 3 or something. It
was like 5. Yeah, it was DS. Yeah. It was like a DSL product.
Yeah, it was very minimal. And at least in Utah, from what I was hearing, they saw a huge uptick of customers choosing. I knew a web developer who was so cheap that they were using the free Google fiber service in promo, which blows my mind. But I think if you're talking 25/3, a lot of the country can get by with that with not subscribing to something else, which blows the business model out of the water for these other companies. But I don't disagree with the concept of it either. So it's like, I agree with probably where Chris is coming from. I agree with what you're saying, but I don't know what the practicality of how it can be.
I think we need to really look at these business models very carefully, right? Once the ISPs realized that we were looking at their profit margins, they stopped publishing any useful information that would let us look at their profit margins. But especially when you have an opportunity like $42.45 billion covering capital expenditures for so many networks, the ROI that you need, the average return per user shifts dramatically, right? If you have no debt servicing on these networks, all of a sudden it opens up things that might not be viable if you're having to put up your company and take out a bond in order to build this thing.
Well,
I think
I
that's
build, I
really
build these
cool.
business plans. I mean, I love the concept too, but
Yeah.
those are 75% grants, which means 25% matching. And the 25% matching is really over 30% because you have to cover your operating expenses in the early years.
Yeah.
And so they are borrowing a lot of money to build these rural networks because the people are spread out.
Well,
And
hold on.
the
Let's be
numbers
clear.
don't look
Sorry,
good.
Doug.
I-
I think
yeah.
it's worth clarifying.
Yes.
Sasha did use the number 42.5 billion, which is going to rural. But I think we're talking about urban networks here, where the
Yeah.
economics are a little bit more friendly. And I
do
think
urban
if,
business plans too, and somebody still has to come up with the matching money, and it's
right, and
not
that's what I was going to
really-
say is
yeah.
that I actually think that if philanthropy saw an opportunity that they could put in 15% of the cost and then and
That would do
guarantee,
it. That
yeah,
would do it.
yeah.
Let the
Or
Gates
the
Foundation make it work. I
Yeah, or
completely
the
agree with
cities
you.
themselves, right? I mean, the
Well-
cities think nothing of building roads and making those freely available.
Sports
This is a
stadiums.
rounding error on that cost. All right,
And
like
the-
it doesn't even begin to rate.
And the
compared to
problem
what-
is we have to get over this idea that they have to get their money back on the bonds because that's right now. There's no city who politically wants to do a fiber bond and not get their money back, and it's just
Yeah.
it's because
Well,
they're being
like,
pounded by the
let's be clear.
incumbents.
That,
They're being pounded by the incumbents.
not nobody. Fair Lawn, Ohio is doing it kind of
Okay.
quietly. Westminster's kind of doing it that way, and they're
Quietly,
sort of
yeah.
like, okay, we'll pay 75 or 80% with revenues, and we'll cover a
Right.
little bit, and that, and
Right.
so that it's happening a little bit.
A little bit. I have a few clients who are doing it, but it's small. Yeah.
We also have to look more holistically at the return on investment, right? So to AT&T, increases in property taxes due to property values going up, that's external to their bottom line. For a municipality, that is directly related to an investment in broadband and should be looked at as part of the return on making that investment.
Well, and let me give you an example that says exactly what you just said. The city of Huntsville, Alabama, and Google Fiber. Google is only paying something like 60% of the cost of that network. And it's supposed to be open access, and Huntsville's never gotten anyone else on it. And they're happy. They're going, the other benefits we're getting from this network they're actually making those 40% of those payments out of their pocket. And they're happy to do so because they're saying the benefits to our city are gigantic. So you have to get over that hump to go, we can afford to make this happen.
But I think that's a PR campaign that is
PR campaign is the trouble.
because like if you say, hey, we're going to do this, and the taxpayers are like, why are you going to do that? Why are you subsidizing this connection when we have the free market? And then I have another question, and I think this is aimed at Travis, because Travis is not a huge ISP. I mean, no offense, Travis, you're no AT&T yet. And what do you think about like this kind of program for somebody who's in that kind of market?
So I guess the first thing I ask is, so if I understood the theory is we're going to give away free baseline connectivity to everybody. That's kind of the general gist here. So why don't we give away free baseline electricity to everybody?
Yeah.
Marginal cost is different.
It is very.
Is it?
Yeah.
It costs
Okay.
$1,000.
Here's
to
the
hook up
thing,
a
though.
home.
Actually, let's be clear, though. Actually,
They're
it's a
already
very
hooked up,
Travis,
though.
your question is actually very interesting because as we move to a grid that is increasingly, based on renewables that don't have a fuel cost, I actually think we'll go in that direction.
I'm just asking the question. I don't know. I mean, I don't think people appreciate, and maybe Kim can touch on this a little bit, of how expensive these networks are to run, operate, maintain, do correct customer service, do everything, and the idea of doing it for free.
Let's be clear. Again, I'm sorry. So first of all, it's not always appreciated. Sasha has more experience than people like me, right? I've learned by looking at what people are doing and studying it. Sasha has actually run networks, so don't assume that.
No, I'm just curious
Yeah.
because
Um,
I'm curious.
but-
I'm
but-
curious
but so-
how this works.
But I think it's also, to be clear, like Sasha's talking about a network that is maybe available to 10,000 people, and perhaps everyone could get a free basic service. And perhaps, 10, 20, 30, 40% of different communities choose to take that. The others are paying something, I'm assuming like only over 40 or $50 a month. And so like there is revenue coming in. They don't have a lot of that.
why
They
would
have
they?
almost no debt. Why would they?
Why would
Because they want to have faster connectivity. I mean, why would you? Like, it's crazy to me. Like, I mean, I pay extra to Comcast. Lots of people do. Like, and especially if my only other choice, the free service is the baseline of what the FCC defines as the minimum. Let me throw back to Sasha though to answer that. And then, Kim, I know you.
Free over-the-air television exists all over the country, and yet people still pay for a premium service, right?
Yeah, but the content producers do that because they get ad revenue from the content.
Mhm.
So would you be an advocate of injecting in the HTTP stream ads so that the provider could recoup the cost of running the network?
There are many ways to operationalize this, and I don't want to overprescribe a singular business model. What I am saying, though, is that we as a civil society do invest majorly, big time, in other free services, primary education being a big one. And this is so valuable across the whole domain. I don't understand why we wouldn't say, hey, you know what? We talk about network effects. We talk about like how valuable this actually is to society. There's numbers being thrown around of like, multi-trillion dollar hits because we didn't have universal connectivity when COVID hit. Like, the opportunity cost is so huge.
Right. There are millions of children who are getting a shittier education because they do not have access in the home, even before they started going home. Oh, great. Amber alert. Sorry about that. There's a tremendous cost. And on top of that, the city of Minneapolis, the county, the state are all running super efficiently because they cannot assume that people are online. We need to make this transition. The Eastern Bloc, like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the things that they do are just blow my mind. And so these are the kind of costs that Sasha's encouraging us to include that we are not including right now. But Kim, you were trying to jump in earlier.
I think I just wanted to understand a little bit more. Are you talking about offering this to everyone, or just offering to low income? Is there any parameters that these people would have to fit under that you're looking at?
Yeah, so you're asking for the detail. There's a lot of devils hidden in there for sure. And again, I think what's more important is that we have conversations about what the true costs of our failure to make these investments are. And then we start talking about, well, how would we operationalize this in a way that would effectively provide sort of minimal services across the board? Now, I think personally that you're going to have a rich ecosystem of different business models and players that could do that. But I think it's worth doing, right? And so that may be like Travis getting directly a client, let's say, that's the city of Minneapolis, saying look, we need you to just provide this baseline connection. And that changes then who the client is. Instead of Travis looking to bill everyone for 25x3 service, you just provide a baseline. And then in many ways, that as Comcast has realized, that low cost service is often the beginning of an onboarding of a whole new client base for your premium services. I think we're likely to see that because frankly, 25x3 works really well until you have kids, let's say. And since we seem to continue to procreate, a lot of families are going to be like, yeah, this 25x3 was great when I was hanging out in my bachelor pad, but now every time they're gone online doing whatever they're doing, I can't do this kind of call. And so it will be a natural thing for folks to then move from that baseline into premium services in the same way that we've seen with so many other elements, right?
But I think there's a lot of education that goes along with that because I think we're making a lot of assumptions that people understand what 25/3 is and what 25/25 means or 100/20 means. And I think that there's education to you can do with that kind of connectivity and more connectivity.
Doug's going to jump in here. I know.
Yeah, this only works. This only works for Travis if the city gives him half the money, so he doesn't have to go to the bank to borrow it. They just give it to him to build, right? So would you do it under those circumstances if they gave you half your construction budget?
I think there's something kind of in the middle here, and I think my original thought on what Sasha was saying is I was really struggling to try to understand. I think I see where he's going with
Happens
it.
a lot.
And Chris, you and I have tried this. We've tried giving this away. We've tried every model under the sun. The connectivity is only one leg of what I think is the three-legged stool. I mean, they don't have technology, these folks. They're not computer savvy. And so just giving away connectivity is just one piece of it. And we when we ran our pilot of giving it away, very few people even took it up took us up on.
Yeah,
it.
no, I mean, so there's two things I would say to that. One is I mean, I really wanted to build on this, but I want to give Doug a chance to speak too, and that's that we need programs. I mean, we got $2.5 billion in the Digital Equity Act that is now available. I think that's going to make a big difference. We need to probably spend more like $10 billion. We need people who are going to do these trainings. This is not something that we'll still be spending money on in 2030, not nearly as much, maybe some, but we need to have a big core of trainings, in part because these benefits come from people not being able to go down to City Hall and fill out paper, right? Like we need to move to new systems and we need to like get people to use those systems. That involves a lot of training. The other piece of it is, Travis, is I just think that it's one of those things that like, if you see something that's happening in your building and you've never heard of it anywhere else and no one else has ever done it, and you're like, oh, free service, it looks like a scam.
Mhm.
If there's a whole coordinated campaign where it's like everyone in Minneapolis now has this free baseline service, I do think we'd see more take up than we saw in the effort that you did.
Yes,
Unfortunately, for this to work, the money's going to have to go to the incumbents because you can't put them out of business. That'll never get through the Supreme Court. And so, but they would take billions. I mean, we can give Comcast billions, right? But then they have to actually follow through and get everybody connected. And that's, how do we make them not just pocket it? There's a whole lot of issues to solve here.
This is no show for political reality, Doug. Get that out of here and let's go back to Travis.
I know.
But I think you're right.
I like the idea, but I also have watched the incumbents pocket amazing amounts of federal money.
Yeah, I expect, and right, we'll be able to empirically test this, but I expect that we're going to see some municipalities and et cetera do exactly this over the next few years with this funding that's being made available.
I agree. It'll be the
imagine if like Minneapolis does this, but not St. Paul. Where is everyone going to move? Right? Like there's a
St. Paul.
There's a massive first mover advantage, and for especially in rural areas, places that do this are going to attract folks, and places that don't are going to rapidly realize that mistake too late.
So, Kim, can you just hold that for a second? Because Travis really waved his hands, and I don't want to lose it.
Yeah, no, because I this conversation fascinates me, and here's what I've whittled it down to is a hybrid model, somewhat similar to what Sasha said, which he said is a very key point in there. Is I think, and what the PC for People guys from all their experience have said, is the one thing I don't like is hindered service. I think that really sets people up to fail. So $10 a month, coupled with the ACP, coupled with gigabit speeds, and what Sasha said is really from an ISP standpoint, what you're trying to get are those kids who are maybe 8, 9 years old right now, who in 10 years, they're your new customers because they have an appreciation for the connectivity. So that's the model we're heading down. And I think it's going to be wildly successful. So it's not necessarily free, but the guys at PCs for People, they were adamant. They said, do not give anything away for free because they don't trust it. They think you're spying on it. They think you're selling your data. That people just, they're suspicious. So that's
Go ahead, Kim.
I want to say to Travis that first of all, we appreciate that he likes one federal program that is out there, and
love it. Well done, federal government.
But okay, so yet again, I'm with Doug. I like this program. I like what we're looking at, but I have some questions about it. So say you have a muni network who gives free service, but you don't, and they're getting money like a federal subsidy, and you have a private entity like Comcast who doesn't. Will there be lawsuits ensuing that you are helping the federal government give away a free service while you're not helping the private sector give away free service?
I mean, to me, it's a question for society. It's a normative question. So we have free education and we have private schools, and those two coexist. And that was a decision we made as a society, that we're just going to make this massive investment in the public good. And I would put connectivity up there as that essential. And again, like in most highly industrialized countries, we've done the same thing with healthcare. We haven't, obviously in the US, much to our chagrin, right? It's hard to look at like us paying the most for the worst outcomes in like the highly industrialized world and say like success looks like this. But when you talk to a lot of communities about connectivity, we're paying more, we're getting worse service in fewer locations than a growing list of other countries. And how it can look at that market failure over the last 15 years, post 2005 with Brand X, and say, this is what success looks like. I think, what the radical position is, carrying on the trajectory we've been on. The non-crazy one is to say, hey, we got to throw a wrench in that and try some new business models. And I hope that we're going to see a lot of innovation coming out of this tranche in a way that we saw a little bit, I would say, in 2009, but should have been a lot more given the rhetoric around this.
I believe there will
so.
be small cities who make this work. So that whether it spreads to big cities is the hard tranche, because that's where the politics come in. So, but it'd be awesome if they do it. So yeah, I mean, this is not 42 billion. This is 420 billion, but we should do it. So
let's not appreciate the people that have come before us. I mean, look what we're doing right now. I mean, there's 5 of us on a high def video call. I'm in an RV park in Albuquerque. Chris is in some place called St. Paul that no one's heard of. And, we're all dotted around the country, and we're having this debate or this conversation. So I'm not sure saying that what we've built to date is a failure. I think it's
but today I want to go back to something Sasha said. I think we're around the 10th most expensive broadband in the world, and the people above us are like Afghanistan, Iraq, and islands who are in the middle of nowhere. But broadband's ridiculously priced.
Get in your car and drive. How big this country is, and there's nothing there.
Yeah,
I would love to be one of these small European countries. Everyone talks about how great Singapore is. Hell, we could wire Singapore in an afternoon.
Right.
There's a couple of different things here that I want to just sort out, and we'll say goodbye to Sasha. One is that from what Travis had just said, our problem is our cities. And so the density really isn't that much of an answer. We are expensive because of our cities, not because of our rural areas so much. The thing about the $10 a month, I think Travis is totally making a really valid point that there are some people that want to pay, and I think it makes sense. The challenge is just that it's not even worth collecting that money. So there we have a conundrum of we don't want some people to feel bad. And so that's just different cities are going to wrestle with that in different ways. And it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Sasha, let me give you just one last minute and then you can run off to your dinner.
Yeah. So, I think it might not even be cities or counties that are going to pioneer these new models. I suspect it's actually going to be tribal authorities, that there is a profoundly innovative push happening out of this space, a part that, Chris is directly responsible for helping Cat herd and coordinate. But I think that we're going to see some really interesting models coming out. And this is poorest of the poor, ruralist of the rural, least networked areas of the country. If we can make things work there through and innovate some business models that might not be sustainable on the single payer side of things, but are sustainable when you have a different client, perhaps a tribe, I think that becomes then something that a lot of other places in the country will look towards and say, well, if they can do it there, why aren't we doing it here?
So, Sasha, let me just leave you then with hitting back at you with something that you said, which is that for people who are watching, our 3 loyal viewers, we need people to change. We really need people to go out and to make this happen, because Sasha mentioned healthcare. And the one thing that we know about healthcare is that for 50 years, people have been looking around and being like, this is so bad. It can't last like this for a while. Something's got to change. And the simple fact is something doesn't have to change. It could very well get worse. And that's why we need people to be out there building coalitions and making it happen. Kim?
And I think this is something I was at the National Leagues of Cities conference earlier this week, and somebody said this. The change happens, and I think this kind of reiterates what Sasha says. The change happens in small areas, and small areas implement this change, and the big cities follow, because big cities can't implement these change without the politics happening. But if they can see these small communities starting and building on this momentum, bigger cities will follow. And I think that is something that kind of resonated with me, because it was change doesn't start from necessarily these 5 million populated cities. It might start with the ones that are 300 with an innovative idea, and then moving from there.
But isn't Utopia a classic example of that? I mean, you guys.
I think it is, but
a lot of success. Yeah.
Sasha, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I can't wait to see what happens next in this realm. It's going to be a crazy couple of years that we're all heading into.
Cool. We'll get you on again soon.
Awesome.
Doug, did you have a final thought there that I cut off?
Well, there actually are some tribes already doing this. What they do is they do charge their customers, and then they give them the money to pay the bill. And now, of course, you can do that with ACP. And I think the big city who might actually pull this off, Chattanooga's having serious discussions about doing this.
Well, yeah, they're paying up. They've paid off their telecom debt. Like they don't.
And
have
if they do
anymore.
this, then the other cities like not far away, like Knoxville, Tennessee, are going to.
Longmont is talking about it too. Yeah,
Right,
Longmont's talking about it.
So, I think it is going to happen a few places.
For you,
But
Doug,
for it to spread to St. Paul, man, that's a stretch.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
Come on, you're killing me.
Giving it making charging them for it and giving back the money. What is the explanation of why they're doing it that way?
Because the folks can't afford it, they actually have started regulated telcos. They can't give it away for free. So they give them the money, they pay the bill, but they have tribal businesses that actually pay the bill for everybody. And so it all looks good on paper. People get free broadband. Everybody's happy. So, sometimes you got to play the weird government games to make things work. That's really what it is. So, yeah.
All right. Doug was making fun of me earlier, saying we weren't going to get to all the topics. So, what are
Are
cities
we?
doing well? What aren't cities
Nah.
doing well? Let's just spend the
We're
rest
going
of
to do
our
that
time.
in 9 minutes? Come on, man.
Oh no, we'd never finish the show in 1 hour. What would be the point of that? We have a good 19 minutes, I would say. So, Travis, let me throw it to you. What are cities doing well?
I don't know
what
if
aren't they doing?
I don't know if I'm necessarily educated enough to do it. I see a lot of cities think that they're going to put up some free Wi-Fi in the parks and places and think that that's going to make a difference. I hate to break it to them, it's not. And so I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. I don't really know what other cities are doing in relation to this. I think a lot of cities are doing a lot of talking. What's that?
You're killing me, Travis, with this answer. Come on. There's cities who are doing a lot of things right.
Well, that's why I'm going to leave it over to Kim to tell us what cities are really doing well.
I think cities are taking action. I think that is a huge victory. For the first time in when I've worked in this industry for 11 years, cities are looking and really taking action to put their broadband into their own, making broadband their priority. To see cities saying, what model works best for me? What model, what company can I partner with? Calling Doug, and Doug is like, I'm so busy, I can't answer your phone call. But they're actually looking into this. And I think that we discount how big of change that has happened in the last 5 years, where before they were cities are well, we have Comcast, we have AT&T, that is just what it is. And they're not thinking that way anymore. And I think that's a huge victory.
What's our definition?
That happened because of the pandemic. Cities got creamed because of the pandemic.
I think they were doing it before the pandemic, but
but now they're serious.
Okay, Travis, what were you saying?
What do we define as a city here, and what are some of these names of these cities? Because as far as I can tell, during the pandemic, cities to me are like water. They're going to take the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is they all ordered a bunch of LTE pucks from whoever the cell provider was in town and then patted themselves on the back about how great a network they built. So I'm curious what cities we're talking about.
And
here.
I have a different question that'll get to the same point that Kim and Doug could have posed. So it's Team Chris and Travis against Team Loser, and it's just brutal today. The con on what Kim said, which I totally agree with. The thing that I would come back with is I think for every city that's calling Doug, there's 20 who aren't. And that's the part that pisses me off. And there's some who are calling Doug just so they can check a box and not actually take the next step. That's the part that worries me.
I'm turning down some cities who want feasibility studies who I know are not going to do the work. So I say I'd rather help someone who's going to do it. So absolutely. Yeah.
I get that. But I mean, before we weren't too many cities, or not minimal cities. And so when every conversation I'm having, people are investigating and saying, before you had to explain what open access was, before you had to explain what P3 was, or whatnot. And I'm not seeing that anymore. I'm at least having the conversations. And I think to Travis's point, I don't disagree with you. During the pandemic, providing Wi-Fi hotspots weren't really feasible, but they're investigating how they get to better connectivity now. And maybe I'm coming off the high from coming and talking to city officials for the past 3 days. I think this. So, but I really do find some hope of what cities are doing.
No, there's some pretty major cities doing some stuff here. Buffalo, New York, and I think it's Tempe, Arizona, one of the big Arizonas.
Tucson certainly has a big
Tucson
CBRS network.
who's doing the wireless stuff to get out
Yep.
to all the school kids for free broadband. You know, it's kind of the 25/3 thing. That's about the kind of speeds that they're seeing. If you live close to it, you're seeing more like 50 or 75. That's doing something. They go, look, our school kids are gonna, and then they're also having a big program to get computers in their home. And so, you know, that Buffalo's doing the same thing, Buffalo, New York, and and I'm sure there's other cities, and those things make a difference. All of a sudden, you know, Buffalo looked around and found out that in a lot of their neighborhoods, something like 60 and 70% of the homes didn't have broadband. They said, we got to fix it. And this was before the pandemic. They started 4 years ago. And so they are doing the same wireless solution that they're looking at there. And so, you know, so I see people doing that. I see smaller cities building free. They're building the public housing and just give them the broadband free. They don't want to be an ISP. They're just hooking it up. It's like, here's your broadband. I see the ones who are really doing a lot, to answer Travis's question. Remember, there's probably 900 or 1,000 municipal electric companies, and a lot of them are looking to do this.
There's 2,000 electrics, and at least 400 of them have long been doing stuff, and I think more of them are getting into it now.
But a whole lot of them are doing it, and they're going to build fiber, and a lot of them are talking about having the rates under $30, so with ACP it'll be free. I mean, they are all having these discussions. I'm working with a whole lot of those folks. There are a lot of cities who are going to be doing stuff. There's a lot of cities who are doing absolutely nothing. So, I mean, you know, there's a lot of cities.
You know, and that's the thing is, I feel like, you know, St. Paul and Minneapolis are not Baltimore, Gainesville, or Knoxville.
No.
Like, and that's part of the problem I think Travis and I have is the frustration. Is like the suburbs around here, they're not doing much. The cities aren't doing much. And there was a while where I was concerned that Minnesota's core cities would not be getting any money from the rescue plan funds. And now I'm kind of worried they are going to get money because I'm afraid they're just going to give it to Comcast. And I just feel like I'm on this like roller coaster of stupidity. Of just like, I'm just so frustrated.
Well, Chris, you know they are. We already know that.
You know they are, right?
The cities approached us about utilizing that money to do some deployment, and it all went to Comcast. So the question here in this is this doing right. I guess this goes right back to the conversation we have all the time. Is if 25/3 is doing it right, there's probably a lot of cities doing it. I guess my opinion is, until you put a gigabit in everybody's home and everyone's apartment building minimum, you haven't done it right. That's just my opinion. And
this gets to this issue. Then I really want to hear from particularly Doug and Kim on this, because when I'm excited about CBRS, and Travis really helped me understand the costs and this and that, and like the issue in Tucson. My understanding is they're looking at like $1,500, $1,800 per home served with CBRS. In some other places, they're looking at that also. These modems are expensive, like all these other costs, the work that they're doing. If you're spending that much money per home, I think, like Travis said, we got to be getting a gig to them. Why aren't we doing that?
Well, for that kind of money, they're not very far away from being able to do it with fiber. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
The CBRS isn't as cheap as we thought it would be, and it's not as good.
No.
It's CBRS, unless you own one of the licensed component or one of the licensed channels, you might get 10 or 20 megahertz spectrum. It's
well, the cities who are doing it, like Buffalo, they do own the spectrum. Remember that some of those guys owned that spectrum back in the days when schools.
But how big a channel are they going to get?
I don't remember. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think people understand, and maybe this is one of the education topics we could talk about, is how much bandwidth a neighborhood uses on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday evening when they're all streaming Netflix and Hulu and playing video games. I think they think that you can just do this like off one Wi-Fi access point, which is effectively what a CBRS tower is. So I think they're going to be sadly disappointed in the results.
Kim?
I don't think that what Tucson is doing is right. I don't think that's the right model. I think it costs too much per home, but I have to commend them for doing something. And maybe I'm positive Polly today, and maybe that's just what it is. Maybe I've switched places with Chris, who's always like nothing. Like the government's
I could be watching basketball right now.
You have to stop. You're not talking like Team Loser here. Come on.
Well, remember, CBRS is easy too. You know, the four of us could set up a CBRS tower this afternoon.
It's plug and play. Yeah.
But I don't think Kim finished. And I do want to note, it's possible that I'm confusing a different city with Tucson. There are places where I'm seeing numbers that are in the order of $1,500, $2,000 per user for CBRS. If it's not Tucson, I'm very sorry for using your project. Go ahead, Kim.
I know that Tucson's doing it, so that's the reason I said it. But yeah, no, I think it's good that they're doing it. I think that we need to commend and like help cities get to the knowledge, and I think that's what we try to do on Connect This in a bizarre kind of backwards way of helping communities realize that they can do something, but what it is. And I think that goes into Doug doesn't have enough time to consult with all the cities in America. So they're having bad consultants who are coming in and selling them something they shouldn't. But yet again, they're taking action. And I think yet again, we have to commend them for that.
Absolutely.
And I get a 30-second plug-in because I just talked to a city recently who had literally had 6 other consultants knock on their door with really bad ideas. Those folks are out there right now selling snake oil. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Well, and if you're the incumbent, I would encourage rolling out CBRS. Hell yeah. Oh yeah, here's a bunch of other technologies. You go ahead and play with wireless. And everyone will spend their money on it, and the incumbent will win at the end.
Right.
No, Doug, do you know what's going on? I mean, Charter and Comcast have a bunch of the CBRS licenses, don't they?
Yeah, but they're going to use it for their own. They're using it. Remember, they're in the cellular business.
Right. Well, that's what I was curious about. So, I mean, so
They're
what
using it
Travis
for
just said
cellular
is
data.
possible.
They're using it for cellular data. So
Oh,
because what they're
there's
doing, remember, they buy cell minutes from T-Mobile, but for every minute they can get onto their own spectrum, it's free, and so that's what they're doing. So
I had thought that they haven't really used it yet. I mean, I think that's what
yeah.
the plan was. Oh,
Well,
they've already deployed it?
They've only just started to deploy that. Remember, they offload a lot already onto Wi-Fi. Remember, Comcast has the biggest Wi-Fi network in the world. And so they capture something like 60 to 70% of their cellular minutes on Wi-Fi today. CBRS will pump them up another 10 or 15%. And so, they will be a formidable cellular carrier just in the cities. I mean, so they're doing it kind of smartly. So.
But I think that CBRS is not a bad thing if they're using it in the for their emergency management system or something else. I think it's being sold as a an in-home solution and a low-cost solution for people with lower demographics or whatever. But I don't think that's the case. I agree.
Well, and it's just like what Travis said. It's like they're poor. 10 megabits is great. What the hell are you complaining about, right? That's exactly that's the attitude behind some of it. So
if you're Comcast or CenturyLink, I would highly encourage the city to explore CBRS. Use all your government free printed money and roll out.
The funny thing is, in
Thanks.
Arizona, they sued the city to try to stop them. So
why would they? If somebody overbuilt the CBRS network on top of UTOPIA Fiber, would you care?
No,
I wouldn't care at all. I'm like, that thing will be dead in 4 years.
So they do have CBRS over top of them. You compete.
You do, but they're not using it for a whole city solution. It's that is not what it's meant for. But this is going back to this the new 5G. 5G is going to be your solution to all your broadband problems. It's not.
It's not.
Let's.
I'm in shock now.
The one of the things that I wanted to note is that even if it looks like CBRS is not working for these cities, we do want to thank them for going out and trying it and seeing what can be done. I'm really tired of people refusing to credit those who have tried things. I think one of the things that I really like about Travis is he's like, oh, new technology, let's give it a try. He's not like, I'm so smart, I've been doing this for 15 years, I know all about this technology already, it's dumb. Well, he's like, let's try it.
You want me to tell you the secret of this entire industry? And the white papers that you get and the tech sheets are always wrong. It doesn't work half as good as they say. So
never.
Yeah, just try it. Maybe it works for some people, but I don't know. I'm just so religious now when it comes to fiber and Ethernet because there's just so many. It's just such a far superior technology to everything else.
Oh no, I've been told recently again that because almost all devices are wireless, it is dumb to use wires. So, from someone who actually works in this business,
use wireless in your home and use wireless when you're walking around on your phone. But if you want to do serious computing, you're not going to do it.
Guys, I have a bone to pick right now that Jim Forrester said, nice shirt, Doug, and didn't like my princess shirt that I like with the princess shirt.
My princess shirt.
Hey, good.
Okay, moving on.
I don't know why we would move on. So I wanted to say, I mean, like, there's a lot of people I feel like who were of the opinion like, yo, Utopia, ha ha ha, like, you know, they were too bold, they were too daring, they tried to do something different, idiots. Like, and so I just wanted to say, like, you know, like, yeah, like, I think we're drawing lessons away from it. I'm really glad people are trying these different things, and I try to keep this mind of just sort of like, I don't think that's going to work. I love that you're running the experiment. Like, check it out.
Well, you got to remember, Utopia struggled like hell because in the beginning, when you're little, that was a horrible model.
Before they had Kim.
You needed economy of scale, and you needed Kim.
Yeah, no, Utopia, like, I will say it, like, that it was the persistence and the people who were at Utopia that made it
right.
success.
They finally made it work.
It wasn't like it was.
Wait, somebody just liked your shirt now.
Well, they could have. Yeah, thank you. It was
a little late. A little
me
late.
a pity like, but thank you. Oh, like, but no, I think it's what I hear, and I think this goes back to something we said before, is every model doesn't work for every city. Because people ask me all the time, will open access work everywhere? I don't believe it will. And I think you have to find the city and the model that works for your community. And I agree with Chris. Maybe we don't agree with it on this podcast, but it doesn't mean that we're right and it won't work for your community.
So anything else that we want to, I mean, we did have this idea of innovative ideas. We kind of stuck with that one model that Sasha presented, which I'd really like to see more experimentation along those lines. But I'm curious, are there things that we should see private companies doing that, like, they're just not being innovative and trying new things that we should be encouraging?
Private companies are simply business plan driven, and they're not creative, and they're not going to get creative. Travis is the most creative ISP I know, plus, you know, the guys in San Francisco, and there's not many others.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no one's willing to take a chance.
Are you talking Monkey Brains out of San Francisco? Is that what you're talking about? Monkey Brains? Is that what you're talking about, or somebody else?
No, the other. What's her name, Chris? I should know.
I'm not tracking.
The big ISP overbuilder in San Francisco.
Oh, Sonic, Dane Jasper.
Sonic,
yeah.
Well, we talked about it before we got on.
He's doing 10 gigabit for $40 a month everywhere still, and he still has a job. Go ahead, Doug. Travis.
And we talked about that a little bit before we got online here. It's just how tough it is to get started, and it's getting more difficult by the day. So I think the thing I always say is it always starts with one. A lot of these people spend so much time analyzing and researching. Just get one customer going. Then get your second customer going and your third. Before you know it, you've got 1,000 customers, and you finally have enough cash flow to keep reinvesting back in the business. This is not an overnight snap your fingers thing.
No, I worked with a nonprofit who about 5 years ago who talked about starting a multi-billion-dollar fund just to help new ISPs get started to make those initial loans, because that is impossible to borrow the money. And so, you know, that was a brilliant idea. They just never quite got there. But so there are some interesting ways. There's a lot of guys who could run great ISPs, but they can't get going. You can do. I have a whole lot of guys who've done the 1 to 2 to 10 to 100, and 5 years in, they're to 3,000, and they still can't borrow a lot of money. You know, every year they can borrow a little more. But the banks have gotten tighter during the last 7 years.
Doug, do you have a sense, like, if we just like kidnapped you and said that, you know, you could only eat if you give us a way to evaluate the best people to run ISPs, so we were making sound investments, do you think you'd be able to choose between those that were like a certain large ISP in Minnesota that we all hope doesn't get RDOF money, and those who are run in a more professional manner?
Believe it or not, you can. You can test them. You can test anybody, whether they have the technical skills, but you can't really test if they have common sense, I hate to say. Right, Kim?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people who look good on paper are just dreadful business people.
Like, it's like you, and I think that my CEO, Roger, and I don't know if he's watching this or not, he's one of the few that he was a CTO. He's a network engineer by heart. But he's a businessman, and you do not find that combination.
No, you do not. There's way too many engineers who make the worst business people in the entire universe.
Because they don't see it. They don't see that there's a customer. Like, one of the things I hear from some engineers all the time is, well, people, if you build it, they will come. And you're like, yeah, that's a great solution. See how that goes in 5 years where you are.
And what else would Roger be doing?
I like making Lego castles, or like I know he's making pinball machines.
Okay, we're doing an event in Salt Lake City. That's it. I want to come. I gotta spend more time with Roger. I'm tired of just like seeing him occasionally in rooms and stuff. Like, yeah.
Yeah, like I think he is probably the geekiest person I know. I mean, he has more Star Wars helmets than anybody, and I haven't even.
Travis just woke up.
I will challenge you, Kimberly. I will challenge you to that. So. As an owner of a 1978 vinyl Cape Jawa, you ask Roger if he can hang with me.
Wait, if he's online, he can pipe.
Yeah. He would be all in this, because I get made fun of as working as a technical company that I've never seen all the Star Wars, Travis. So it's okay.
Chris, I'm not sure if it's possible to see all the Star Wars, but I assume you just mean the cinematic releases.
You have never seen the Star Wars releases. Wow. Well, it's like me saying I've never listened to the Grateful Dead either. So maybe Doug would, yeah.
Well, I hate to tell you, but I don't think I can be on a panel with him anymore.
I don't believe it's possible that Travis hasn't heard Grateful Dead. He just hasn't gone.
Well, I always say the touch of gray, and real Deadheads are like, that isn't the Dead, right?
That's not the Dead. No.
I was driving from Yuma up here, and there was a big dedicated to Jerry Garcia road along the way. I don't know if he grew up in this area or not, but there was a big to-do driving down the freeway.
No, he grew up in the Bay Area.
So I want to say one other thing. We're going to be closing out in a second. Henry, did you get the other thing I forwarded you from my personal account? It's another image. If you want to throw that up, we can. Otherwise, we'll save it for the next time. But we earlier there was a discussion. I think Doug said that Google's the only one on Huntsville. As I understand it, there are 10 leases on Huntsville. It's just that none of them are citywide except for Google.
No, there's lower ones, and so I didn't mean to imply that. But they have not gotten their original pile of people paying 100% of the lease cost. Right?
In West Des Moines, they announced a similar arrangement. I think Google's paying much less than 60%, maybe closer to 40-50%. In that case, they have two others that have come on. I mean, MediaCom.
MediaCom are coming on.
Yeah, that was a dramatic change, and then there's another provider as well that's also using it. So, I think it's interesting to see what happens with these networks as they move forward. And prior to 1996, we didn't have 7,500 ISPs, right? Like,
we may have gotten to the time because of these private investors that we might see people show up on these open access networks.
Let's finish up on that, because that's really we lost Empire. Was it Empire that just got bought in New York? I think. I'm curious if we're just going to lose them faster than they can be created at this point.
That's possible, because they get gobbled up and everyone's consolidating. You're right. So.
And remember,
Travis is going to sell to Comcast in 7 or 8 years when he retires anyway. So.
No, you get enough revenue going, you can just kind of harvest it forever. But the thing is with these upstarts, so how much equity is somebody willing to give up? Are you willing to give up 80-90% equity to get the cash you need to start your dream? Well, now your dream's 10%. I don't know. I don't know how many people are going to do that. And then on the other token, how many people are going to risk their house and their kids' college funds and their 401ks to personally guarantee debt? I don't know. I don't know how many people there are out there.
I was told a number of years ago that I was never allowed to do that again. So I know exactly what that's like. So.
I'm going to go back to Doug's comment that he's got Travis is going to retire when he sells to Comcast. I thought Travis was retired. Look at him.
Oh yeah, that's true. Good point.
Okay, so
I'm busily working here.
So we do have the last photo now, and this has to do with all of this. This will be the thing that sends us out, because the next time we get together, the vaults won't be in this shape.
Look at that, Doug. What do you think?
Goodness.
That is a Minnesota hole in the middle of winter.
It's preserved.
I sure hope that nobody has to try to fix someone's line out of there.
Future scientists are going to pull that out, and they're going to try and learn about our culture from it.
Wow.
So here's the moral of the story. If you're starting a new ISP, try to avoid being north of, I think, the Mason-Dixon line, because this is what you deal with in the winter. And yes, Susie's internet is not working, and the problem is in there. What are you going to do?
You say Susie will fix it in May, is what you say.
Yeah,
I haven't heard somebody use a Mason-Dixon line in so many years.
I don't know. I was just trying to think of something. I don't even know where that is.
What goes east and west? So thank you, Henry, for pulling that together.
That was ugly.
Next week we are scheduled to have on two exciting guests, Jason Hardebeck from Baltimore and Joshua Edmonds from Detroit, to talk about what their cities are doing right. These are two cities that I really wish other cities were paying attention to, and I hope that they really learn from. So that's going to be an exciting show. And then we're going to take 2 weeks off, because I'm going to take 2 weeks off. And by being off, I just mean I'm going to be working not in this office. And if I'm not in St. Paul, I can't guarantee I'm going to have an awesome connection and just be in the mood to do the show. So we're going to take 2 weeks off, and we'll be back, hopefully, with Kim and Doug, some new stories. It's always wonderful sharing a show with you. Thank you so much for spending this time with us.
I have a closing comment for Team Loser here. So I'm never, ever going to say, Kim, break a leg. So.
Yeah.
See, Doug, like, you have the tie-dye, I have the princess. I feel like we need to figure out our brand better than Team Loser. We got to figure that out.
Yeah, I think maybe that's projecting is what I think is going on here. So.
Who's team winner?
Not you two.
Yeah. I don't know. So it's Team Loser versus Team Loser? Is that what we're dealing with?
No. It was Team Loser versus Travis and Chris. I was that creative. That's how creative I am.
Okay, yeah. I think we lost, though, Chris. Yeah.
I think we're all winners, and I'm going to go watch half of the teams that are on TV lose. Do people romanticize March Madness? March Madness is a tournament in which 67 of 68 teams are crushingly disappointed.
Yes. Their teams are crushed.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a wonderful episode of
This was a
Connect
good
This.
episode.